Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
President's personality or his rhetoric. You can dislike that all you want on how he talks to the media, but what we really need to find out is how is this when it comes to the policy and what benefits Americans, and that's what reporters are getting wrong.
She's right, Judy. A lot of presidents or presidential candidates have promised to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, and nobody's done it until now.
Absolutely right, John. No one has done it for very good reason. And the reason can be seen on the split screens that are being viewed by people all over the world. On one hand, you have the Americans and the Israelis and no Europeans, no one else, toasting the opening of the embassy in a disputed part of the Israeli territory. And you have on the other side more than 47 Palestinians killed so far, and the numbers are still going up, 1,600 wounded, violence in Gaza, 40,000 at the border. This is a split-screen story. It's not that the media are being unfair to the president or his decisions. It's that it is controversial. And our job as reporters is to cover that controversy, to tell you the pros and the cons of the decision to move the embassy at this point. Of course, every presidential candidate has vowed to do it, and nobody has done it because this was supposed to be part of a peaceful settlement, which we don't have right now.
Well, Beverly, I suppose nobody would expect the Palestinians to be happy about this.
Absolutely not, and there are even reports of more countries wanting to move their embassy as well. Let's not forget Israel is one of our strongest allies. This is their capital city. This is just recognizing what our ally already says is their capital. And I think what we may find, and I hope what we do find, is that this does lead to more conversations. And I think the Trump administration, what they're trying to do with this policy or with other policies against Iran, even how they're working with North Korea right now, trying to find a diplomatic solution to getting rid of the nuclear program there, is hoping that they can bring people to the table by showing we mean what we say. This is a different approach. This is not status quo, what we've seen from previous presidents who may talk a big game or not talk a big game at all and not follow through. But this is definitely a different way of handling things, and I'm hoping we see progress from it.
Isn't it the case, Judy, that the Palestinians are sort of the pawns of the Middle East? They get stuck in the middle of Arab-Israeli or maybe Iranian-Israeli relations and sort of used by one side or the other.
That's absolutely true, John. And beyond that, they are also their own worst enemy.
Yeah.
What we saw from the Palestinian leader who denounced the Israelis, who committed a terrible, more than faux pas, just gave a speech which actually blamed the Jews for the Holocaust. It was racist, it was ugly, it was violent, and he had to apologize for it. So the Palestinians have not been well served by their leaders. But whether whether or not that is the case, the decision to move the embassy now is one that's likely to inflame the situation, not to calm it down. And my question for Bibi Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, whom I know and whom I've interviewed several times, is how does this advance the peace process? Where is that peace plan that you've been promising? I want to keep an open mind. If the president succeeds, I will be the first to applaud. But so far, all we have, at least in Israel, is greater violence and death. And that's not what was supposed to be the end result of this decision.
It is Tuesday, the 15th of May of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. That's right, no Old Bay, folks. Never Old Bay. That's for a different dish. Okay, well. That was Judith Miller at the top on Fox. You know, she's a Fox News contributor, by the way. And the Fox people there were taking the media to task for their terrible coverage of Trump and the Middle East. And, why don't they treat Trump well? And Judith Miller threw cold water on those attempts to bash the media. And over the coverage of this move of the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. Looks like there's 60-some deaths that were people killed. They didn't just die, as the New York Times said this morning. Yeah, 58 people died. They were killed. Women and children, too. But as Tomi Lahren stated, hey, look, Israel's just defending their borders. Well, wait a second. I thought those people lived there. Also, okay, fine. Yeah, defending their borders. I suppose if you make a prison and then say that a bunch of people living there are the prisoners, I guess you're going to have to defend those borders somehow, right? Don't let them in or out. Well, as I said in the show notes, when you've lost Judith Miller, you know you're in trouble. All right. Well, Tomi Lahren also had a little pity party on Fox. She's now claiming that the genealogist who looked into her family background is apparently doing something criminal. These right wingers, you know, they project so much. They call us the snowflakes. Of course, let's remember where the term snowflake came from. Yes, Nazi Germany, when, people, I think they were called Jews, were incinerated in the ovens, and the ash that fell were called snowflakes. Let's not forget where the term came from, and let's not forget why it's so readily embraced by the right wing. It's almost like it's part of their DNA. Well, I'm full of opinions today, aren't I? Well, Tomi Lahren's all peeved because it turns out that her ancestors are exactly like the people that she condemns, because this is what America's about. It doesn't matter if you don't speak the language. Do you come here? Are you a good neighbor? And it would be nice if you contributed something to society, even if it's through simply your hard work paying your bills. Even that can be noble, unless it's made not to be so. Okay, well, this young woman is making a lot of money spewing hate. And I can attest to you that, the spewing of love really doesn't pay unless you put a little tweak in it. And, take over a small town in eastern Oregon and call yourself the love guru. Yeah. Then it'll pay. Then you'll get a lot. I don't know what did Bhagwan have? He had 40 some odd Rolls Royces? 50? Yep. Then love will pay. But it's going to be tweaked just a little bit. If you're just professing love, you're not getting even the Soros money. Because if I'm getting Soros money, it's been about 4 decades, maybe more. Because I was, about 4 decades. I was 19 when my friend John Koenigshofer and I organized the big Impeach Nixon rally here on the West Coast. Yep. Been getting death threats ever since. It's almost like it's in their DNA. All right. Well, what else are we going to be attending to today? There's so much news out there. Well, I mean, do we go... let's talk a little bit about the deaths on Gaza and Ivanka. I mean, she's got blood on that white dress. When you put on the special They Live sunglasses, you could see it. And they were having a grand old time, weren't they? München. Boy, he looked like he was able to, hold a bunch of sheets of dollar bills again. Just freshly minted. Yep. Well, Trump's name on that plaque is in a font that is larger than Israel. I don't know. It just never ends, the ego. Well, Mr. Trump, I got to tell you, you better start reading some Shelley, or maybe have somebody read Shelley to you since you don't read. Maybe somebody could recite Ozymandias on Fox and Friends someday. Well, what's on the rest of the menu? I'll tell you. We'll start off, of course, we have already started off in the Bistro Cafe with Judith Miller throwing cold water on Fox News. And she's a Fox News contributor. Well, Betsy DeVos's education department dismantled the team investigating for-profit colleges. Yeah, and she's got some investment in some for-profit colleges, by the way. You would think that, with her Blackwater money, being the sister of Eric Prince, and then being the wife of the Amway heirs, that she would need to make more money. But it is truly an addiction. The more you got, the more you gotta have, until you think you got it all, and even then, that is not enough. Well, okay. Hey, the White House can't explain how Chinese financing of a Trump-linked project in Indonesia doesn't violate the Constitution. Well, of course they can't explain it. They got their civics lessons from that crash course the FSB gives to Russian assets, dupes, idiots, and, just people who happened along. Right there in the Kremlin. You can do it on a telecourse, too. You can. And lawmakers in both the Senate and House call for investigations after emails reveal the Trump administration tried to block a critical health study about toxins near military bases. Well, we can't tell the American public they're being poisoned. That would endanger national security. After the break, we'll move to the chef's table, where Trump stole another family's crest and now wants to trademark it to sell some furniture. The guy is a crook. And Mad Magazine's clout may have faded, but its ethos matters more than ever before. Yeah. Before The Onion, we were mad. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At the bottom of our homepage at networksradio.com, you'll notice to the right-ish the chat room link. Kelly Lincoln, our roaring girl, monitors that quite frequently throughout the day. So do engage us there. To the leftish of the chat room link are the contribute, donate buttons, very integral parts to this whole operation, because without you, we would be unable to do this, and your generosity keeps the lights blinking in the proper order, as they should. And when that happens, that means we're broadcasting to the world. Yes, indeed. Follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. And we're on Facebook, too. So if you want to go there, I suppose it doesn't matter. You know, Twitter, Facebook, it's all the same anymore, right? Or as my mom likes to call Facebook, my face. Yeah, she remembers. She does. Yes. Okay. And follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. And go to Daily Co's as well, because that's where I post the show notes and links. And I got to tell you, that's an integral part of the show. It's a multimedia operation. So there's plenty of bells and whistles and of what may be entertaining value or enlightening in some small way. But the show notes and links to the articles that we touch upon today are there. So I'm on Daily Co's as Justice Putnam. How easy is that? You can get podcasts of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Oh, yeah, YouTube. Yeah, get it on YouTube, too. No pictures. It's too early in the morning for me to want to be on camera. Used to be I could just get up, tousle my hair a little bit, and I was ready to go. Now, no way. No way. It takes a little bit of work for me to get ready. Not that I'm vain or anything, but, well, okay, so a little. Maybe just a little. All right. Yeah. I always tell people it's always easier to tell people, oh, just accept yourself. Just accept yourself. I don't know where I'm going with that. I won't then. Okay. Well, what do we have first up here? Betsy DeVos. God. You know, there were quite a few Amway types in Orange County, California back in the 70s. And, you know, as a kid, you don't know what the hell's going on. I mean, it's like Tupperware parties. They were very similar to the Tupperware parties, except I got to say the Tupperware parties didn't seem so religious. There was a real religious component to every Amway type that I came across as a high schooler. And, yeah, so DeVos being part of the Amway umbrella, and then being, you know, a prince with, you know, Blackwater G, or whatever the guy calls his company now. Change your name so many times, you must be trying to run for something. Run from something. Yeah, indeed. Well, this is an article by Casey Quinlan out of Think Progress. A team at the Department of Education that looked into abuses at for-profit colleges has been significantly dismantled. Current and former employees of the department, members of the team, which was created in 2016. Oh, these were interviews that the New York Times had with current and former employees of the department. And that's where the blockbuster reportage came out of initially, was the New York Times. Well, this team created in 2016, like, I guess it was during the Obama years. Anything that happened during the Obama years has to be erased from history. You know, Trump is doing the old thing of like all petty tyrants do. Somebody's got their name on the edifice over there. Well, we'll just chip that out. Get the chisel out. Take his name out. Never existed. I mean, what is this? What is it about this guy? I know what it is exactly about this guy. I think there should be work requirements for trust fund babies. You want your trust fund? You got to go to work. And pee in a jar. Just because, I don't know. When will we decide the humiliation ends? Well, when we decide. There are only 3 employees on the team now who focus on student loan forgiveness and compliance cases for millions. Millions. Well, the whole point here, folks, is that the rubes, the marks, they hate them. That's why they want to exploit them. And if a rube is stupid enough to fall for the scam, F them. And if they complain, make them pay more. This government is now being run. Some people might have argued it was being run as a mob operation before, but that was hyperbole. It is being run as a mob operation. And all of us people, citizens, we little people, we don't matter. We're loathed. I mean, look at every single gangster movie. They always talk in condescending tones about regular people. I never wanted to be a regular person. And a regular person was one who went to work, paid their debts. Regular people. Losers. Oh, you apologized for doing something? You were the lowest of low. Who thinks like that? Yeah. Mobsters. Mobsters can never say they're sorry. Because if they did, they consider that to be a weakness. Now, I got to tell you, where I come from, the inability to apologize for a transgression, well, it means you're pretty weak. And look at it. Everything is for show. It's the image that's important, not the substance. He is a weak man. He just doesn't want to be reminded of it. And somehow apologizing for something, well, maybe he's seen someone, didn't attain the great wealth that he thinks he has. And they apologized, and so therefore they're losers. On the other hand, maybe Trump is a reflection of society as a whole. All of us here. I mean, why the popularity of these cage matches? It's not enough just to, have a little boxing match or wrestling match and somebody goes down to the ground and they're knocked out. But it's another when you pounce on the person who's knocked out and beat the crap out of him some more. What kind of message is that sending the kids? Huh? Times asked for comment from the Department of Education. Elizabeth Hill, a spokeswoman for the department, said the group was reduced due to attrition, and that these investigations are but one way the investigations teams contributes to the department's broad effort to provide oversight. Offering here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, is an article by Aaron Rupert out of Think Progress. Would it be wrong to nickname Raj Shah Baghdad Raj? Because this guy, I don't know, you almost wish for Sarah, which is bad. That's bad, okay? That's how you know we're living in hell, or at least purgatory. Deputy Press Secretary Raj Shah cannot explain how the Trump organization's involvement in a project in Indonesia, partially financed by the Chinese government, adheres to the Constitution's Emoluments Clause and Trump's personal promise not to pursue new foreign business deals while he is president. The Trump organization is involved in a project in Indonesia building hotels, golf courses, residences, and it's getting up to $500 million in backing from the Chinese government, Noah Berman of the LA Times said during yesterday's press briefing. Can you explain the administration's position on A, how this does not violate the Emoluments Clause, and B, how this wouldn't violate the president's own promise that his private organization would not be getting involved in new foreign deals while he was president? Well, of course, Shah didn't even attempt to answer Berman. He just said, I'll have to refer you to the Trump organization. What? Okay, there's the name Trump, and there's a guy, ostensibly the president of the United States, named Trump, who is getting money from this company called Trump, and the company called Trump can't talk about what's going on with a foreign government because they're a private company. Well, Bierman did point out to Shaw the Trump organization can't speak on behalf of the president as the president, the head of the federal government, the one who's responsible, who needs to assure the American people, and they don't have that responsibility. Yeah, well, Shaw wouldn't budge. You're asking about a private organization's dealings that may have to do with a foreign government. It's nothing that I can speak to. And then he called on another reporter. They cannot answer the question because they are in gross violation. And, they have, I think they have dreams of sugar plums and oligarchies dancing in their heads. Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, is another article out of Think Progress as well, but this time by E.A. Crunden. EPA and White House officials worried that a toxic chemical study would cause a public relations nightmare. That's all they care about. They don't want to fix a problem. They want to put makeup on it. Jeez, God, it just... Well, lawmakers called for a probe and the release of a controversial study after emails revealed that Trump administration officials attempted to block a public health study from being published over worries it would cause a public relations nightmare and reflect poorly on both the Department of Defense and the EPA. The unreleased study relates to toxic chemicals contaminating water supplies near sites, including chemical plants and military bases. Well, now let me just read here just quickly. Emails obtained by the Union of Concerned Scientists under a FOIA reveal that EPA and White House employees sought to bar the release of a toxic chemicals assessment from the Department of Health and Human Services Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry. Representative Carol Shea Porter called the revelations outrageous and an unacceptable decision to conceal critical public health research. Members of the Senate, Jean Shaheen similarly called the decision to withhold the study unconscionable. And both senators and in the House, representatives and senators are calling for investigations. The chemicals referred to in the emails are PFOA and PFOS, are used in a number of products, including Teflon, which has been linked to chemical cancer, they say. Companies have argued that their products carry only low levels of such chemicals and are safe for people, but experts worry even those levels offer too much exposure. And what this study discovered is that human toxicity levels are at even lower numbers than what previous studies and industry had said were safe. Okay, defense officials worried it might be used as a factor in Superfund site cleanup requirements, and that would make such processes significantly more intensive and expensive, not only for the military, but also for chemical plants. Well, I don't know, maybe don't buy that $3 million toilet seat this time. Put it towards a Superfund fund. Why don't you do that? Well, Under Trump, funding meant to clean up toxic waste sites is set to shrink. The administration has proposed cutting the Superfund cleanup program from $1 billion to $762 million. And a Florida study published 2 months ago in the Journal of Statistics and Public Policy found that state residents living in counties with Superfund sites were 6% more likely to receive cancer diagnoses. Well, you know how you figure that one out when you're a Trumpster? Don't have a study and don't make the diagnosis. No one will have cancer then. All right, let's get to our break, and when we come back, we'll go through weather from around the world, and we'll finish up with some stories that we've curated for you today. You're listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, The Mother of All Jobs. Films about the reality of motherhood seldom get as real as the Diablo Cody penned, Jason Reitman directed Tully. Starting with a very glammed-down Charlize Theron, the movie tells the story of Marlo, a stressed-out mother of two whose life becomes even more stressful with the addition of an unplanned third child. Struggling to even make it through the day, thanks in part to sleep deprivation and the daily challenges of dealing with a son with an unnamed behavioral issue, Marlo eventually breaks down and hires a night nanny, compliments of her high-achieving brother Craig, who also has 3 children, but who also has the luxury of full-time help. The nanny, Tully, is an exuberant woman in her 20s, played by the awesome Mackenzie Davis, and who takes as much care of Marlo as she does of the new baby. Pretty soon, Marlo finds she's able to cope better with life's daily grind and even take some joy in it. Without spoilers, this setup makes the film's shocking twist even more unexpected. Still, even without the twist, Tully is an important film for showing what motherhood is like for most women, namely, a hard job and by and large a thankless one. Even those in so-called good marriages like Marlo's often find themselves alone when it comes to the actual grunt work of taking care of kids. More romantic images of motherhood are by and large left out of the reach of most women who don't have the resources of a family like Craig and his wife. Tully is arguably Diablo Cody's best work since the underrated 2011 gem Young Adult, and it shows us once again why Theron is an Oscar winner. Tully might not be a masterpiece, but it is an example of excellent filmmaking enhanced by a dynamic script. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at Take2MovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. North Korea has promised to close its underground nuclear test site at Mount Montauk later this month. Shortly thereafter, President Trump is set to meet North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un, in Singapore. Regardless of how that goes, there is now an additional tool to investigate covert subterranean tests, radar. Specifically, a type called synthetic aperture radar, which works day and night and through clouds. Scientists already use seismic data in their nuclear detective work.
We use the kind of techniques that earthquake seismologists use to figure out some aspects of what that explosion did.
Roland Bergman, a geophysicist at the University of California, Berkeley. He says they can also measure isotopes in the air, as well as optical images pre- and post-explosion. Now Bergman and his team have used synthetic aperture radar data from German and Japanese satellites to gather more clues about North Korea's biggest blast in September 2017. Comparing before and after scans of the test site, their analysis found that the mountain bulged a dozen feet in one direction and sunk 1.5 feet. Using computational modeling, they then simulated what sort of blasts could have produced those movements. In their estimate, the blast was at least 6 times as strong as the bomb the U.S. dropped on Nagasaki in World War II. The details are in the journal Science.
Our study shows that this is an especially valuable observation that can be thrown into the mix.
When the U.S. and India launch their synthetic aperture radar satellite, called NIDAR, in 2020, we'll have even more of this new kind of data. The hope is that no unauthorized nuclear tests will take place and need discovery. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. In 1862, President Abraham Lincoln issued an executive order to increase the areas of the country where the writ of habeas corpus could be suspended by military commanders. Lincoln's proclamation also authorized trials by military tribunals or commissions of all rebels and insurgents, their aiders and abettors within the United States, and all persons discouraging voluntary enlistments, resisting military drafts, or guilty of any disloyal practice, affording aid or comfort to rebels against the authority of the United States. Congress enacted a law on March 3, 1863, ratifying the president's decisions to suspend the writ of habeas corpus. Military trials of civilians, however, were judged constitutional only if they occurred in areas of warfare or imminent threat of armed conflict in which the civil courts were not functioning. Nearly 1 year after the Civil War ended, on April 3, 1866, the Supreme Court unanimously decided that a civilian, Lambton Milligan, should not have been tried and convicted by a military court in a state, Indiana, where the civil courts were open and operational. That's all for today's podcast. The show's theme song is Complacent by Cheryl B. Englehart. You can find Cheryl online at cbemusic.com. 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
Get ready, America. Here we go to war. Generalissimo Trump, whose nom de guerre is El Donaldo, the mucho macho presidente of the USA, is personally directing the hostilities in this assault on, surprise, the USA. Well, not every American. He's specifically mounting a war on our country's poor people, though he euphemistically calls it a war of liberation. The purpose, he says, is to, quote, free poor families from food stamps, Medicaid, housing assistance, and America's other programs that alleviate poverty. Welfare, he snarls, as he and his militant lieutenants conduct ruthless slash-and-burn forays to defund and destroy such benefits. Their rationale is that eliminating anti-poverty assistance will not only save billions of tax dollars and reduce the federal budget deficit, but it'll also provide a moral incentive for poor people to get jobs and work their way up to prosperity, like El Donaldo and his billionaire buddies did. Actually, Trump inherited a real estate fortune from his daddy Fred, and he expanded it by relying on billions of dollars in government subsidies, tax breaks, and special favors. As for working, most poor people already have jobs, but the miserly pay of those jobs mire them in poverty and drudgery. Even more significant, the vicious, laissez-faire land sense of moral superiority possessed by pampered political elites like Trump lead them to be intentionally cruel to the poor. This is Jim Hightower saying he, his cabinet of multimillionaires, and such coke-headed congressional ideologues as GOP House Speaker Paul Ryan and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell are so disdainful of the needy that they have a perverse impulse to punish them, as though being poor is not punishment enough. It's said that war is hell, but their war on the poor is truly satanic.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
From New York, I'm Luke Fargus with your World in 2 minutes. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu joined top U.S. officials today to open the American Embassy in Jerusalem. The city was decked out in banners praising President Trump's decision to relocate the U.S. facility from Tel Aviv, including road signs that read, "Trump, make Israel great." That wasn't the only attempt by the Israeli government or Netanyahu to mirror Trump's rhetoric that past U.S. presidents had failed to keep their promises to Israel.
Thank you, President Trump. for having the courage to keep your promises.
As Netanyahu spoke, news trickled out of nearby Gaza of dozens of Palestinians killed by Israeli security forces during heated protests. As of press time, the Associated Press put the Palestinian death toll at 41, making Monday the most violent day in Israel in the last 5 years. But short of addressing concerns that moving the U.S. embassy to a city jointly claimed by Israel and Palestine as a capital, Netanyahu used a word even American officials shied away from, undivided, suggesting Israel has no intention of sharing Jerusalem with Palestine.
God bless the United States of America, and God bless Jerusalem, the eternal, undivided capital of Israel.
And the World Health Organization wants to eliminate trans fats around the world within the next 5 years. Trans fats occur naturally in some animal products, but are more often industrially produced as partially hydrogenated oils. Those oils found a home in fast food fryers and other baking applications, but have largely been phased out across the U.S. when nutrition labeling laws mandated trans fats get their own line in food packaging. The science driving the WHO's push to eliminate trans fats is stark. Trans fats have been linked with higher bad LDL cholesterol and lower levels of good HDL cholesterol, as well as significantly heightening risks of heart disease. Luke Fargus, New York.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, that's right. Well, let's begin with weather from around the world, and we always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 60 degrees. Yes, it's still morning, and we're going to be much cooler than we were yesterday. We went to about 95 yesterday. Ooh, my God. And we will be going to about 80, well, low 80s today. Though the wind is out of the southwest at a negligible 2 miles per hour, we will be increasing later on this morning to 5 to 10 miles per hour coming out of the west. And then the weather will become unsettled. Currently, visibility is about, 10 miles. But we will have some unsettled weather a bit later. We are expecting thunderstorms with, it looks like about a half an inch of rain later on today. And then overnight, another third of an inch. And then tomorrow, about a quarter of an inch. So, okay. I guess I will take it as long as it doesn't splatter everything away that I've planted that haven't, are still sprouting. We don't want that. Grass pollen is very high. Like I've said, it's the acacias that would get me. I don't know what will get me now. We'll see. Your body changes every 7 years. It just pushes out all these cells and new ones take over. And pretty soon you don't have the old allergies that you had. You get new ones. Welcome to purgatory, my friend. Yes, we must be in the right place. No data on air quality, though. It seems good to me. The UV index right now is going to be very high at 8. Okay, get that sunscreen on. Humidity is at 79%. And, so thunderstorms later on today and tonight. All right. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchase. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people live around the world. London is 72 degrees and sunny. Paris, to the rest of us, is 67 degrees and mostly cloudy. Yeah, that's a loud truck going by. All right. Rome is 61 and partly cloudy, and they may have some disruptions because of rain. Yep, lots of rain. Kiev is 73 and fair. Kabul is 58 and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 77 and clear. Tokyo, 71 and clear. Sydney, Australia, 55 degrees and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California, 54 degrees and a little shaky, and they're cloudy. And New York is 74 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. You did have a fog advisory, but that's been lifted, and now it's sunny spring in New York. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by People's Personal Weather Stations that they purchased. These people planted these personal purchased weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. First article here is by Noor Al-Sabai out of Raw Story here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Trump is such a bottom feeder, and I know that it's probably unwise of me to make these sorts of proclamations. It sounds very classist, and yes, it does. It not only sounds, it is, and I agree. I'm making a judgment. Now, it's a personal judgment. Bear with me a bit. It's really a matter of taste. He is so shallow of an individual that he has to put on these trappings that he's great. Okay, so when he took over Mar-a-Lago, he thinks that he could just take a family crest, one that's been registered for about 1,200 years or whatever, right? And appropriate it as his own. And the original family crest was, here it is, Marjorie Merriweather Post. And the original belonged to the family of Joseph Edward Davies, who was the third husband of Mar-a-Lago builder Margie Merriweather Post, and featured the word integritas, which is Latin for integrity, and Trump replaced integrity with his name, which says it all. And he went to court to say, this is mine, this is mine, this is mine. And apparently the Scottish Coat of Arms Authority said no. And you were banned from using this crest anywhere over here in Europe. They tried to get it in America. America said, who cares? If someone named their fish taco stand McFish tacos, McDonald's would come and shut them down because they had the Mc. But Trump could just appropriate someone else's family crest, which is not recognized as his anywhere else in the world except within the confines of the grassroots United States. Well, he's now going to court to be able to use that crest to put it on furniture so he can make some more money. I got to tell you, the Sharper Image isn't doing a mail order thing anymore, Don. Unless he's anticipating outfitting all government buildings with new furniture with, his crest. Okay. Oh, and the Scottish Coat of Arms Authority has banned the Trump Organization from using the crest in the UK. But it hasn't stopped the president's company from using it at its golf clubs in the U.S. And the trademark filing that the Trump Organization has filed specifies that the entire coat of arms should be gold. I don't know if it's plated or solid. Probably just a very thin coat.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour, pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers. C'est tout.
Final offering for the day here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays is by Michael J. Socolo, Associate Professor of Communication and Journalism at the University of Maine, writing for The Conversation, because you can't get this stuff in American papers, apparently. Well, Alternet does, and that's, at least I got that portal to pull it from. So, okay. Now, some of my demographics I've noticed when I'm following that sort of metric, maybe you don't know about Mad Magazine, and maybe you do. But Mad Magazine was a very integral part of a young burgeoning mind, and I will admit that I succumbed to its enthralling influence. So much so that I would hide it in the books that I would have in class, pretending that I was reading the textbook when I was really reading Mad Magazine, which became a cliche of the times. And let me tell you, this is before you had streakers, okay? Way before streakers, you had Mad Magazine. What? Me worry? Now, I was very much into comic books when I was younger, to the disdain of my academic father, who looked at comic books and science fiction generally, but comic books in particular, not the Archie comics. I mean, that was like little kid stuff, but the superhero comic books, and then by extension, really science fiction as lowbrow, that one should attain a much loftier literary endeavor. And so I would have to actually debate the virtues of comic books. And boy, it was tough. So tough that pretty much I had to hide the fact from my academic father that I was reading those comic books. Well, I made up for it by reading lots and lots and lots of other stuff too. And I found out that actually the superhero comic books and a few others, even the detective comic books of the time, tracked very closely to great pieces of literature. Yeah, indeed. So during that time, Mad Magazine to me was just another comic book. Like a superhero comic book, a mystery comic book, a detective comic book, and here was a comic book of satire. Though Mad Magazine did start off as a mystery and then moved into satire. Actually, around the same time that I started reading Mad Magazine, which was probably 8 or 9, yeah, kind of young. Yeah, I was precocious. I learned how to read at an early age, and I couldn't get enough. Still can't. I had stumbled upon Art Buchwald, of all people, writing for the Washington Post. At the same time, I discovered Mad Magazine, so the term satire was ascribed to both both Art Buchwald and Mad Magazine, and I took to it. It resonated with me. I saw how humor, biting humor, could reveal truths about us as individuals, and also our place in our society, culture, government, etc., etc., etc. But the irreverence, the abject irreverence of Mad Magazine is what really appealed to a young prepubescent and then pubescent boy. It was like on the level of fart jokes, but a little bit loftier than that if you looked at it with the right kind of eyes and maybe held your nose just a tad. So, The good professor here said that Mad preached subversion and unadulterated truth-telling when so-called objective journalism remained deferential to authority, while newscasters regularly parroted questionable government claims. Mad was calling politicians liars when they lied. Long before responsible organs of public opinion like the New York Times and the CBS Evening News discovered it, Mad told its readers all about the credibility gap. Yeah, it was Mad Magazine that coined the term the credibility gap. The periodical's skeptical approach to advertisers and authority figures helped raise a less credulous and more critical generation in the 60s and the 70s. Because one of the ethos of Mad Magazine is, first of all, don't trust anything that the government tells you or an advertiser. Subvert authority. What? Me worry? Today's media environment differs considerably from the era in which Mad flourished, but it could be argued that consumers are dealing with many of the same issues, from devious advertising to mendacious propaganda. While Mad's satiric legacy endures, the question of whether its educational ethos, its implicit media literacy efforts remains part of our youth culture is less clear. I would say no. Let's see. The pattern goes on something like this. Because there's a cyclical nature of media panics and media reform movements throughout American history. A new medium gains popularity. Chagrined politicians and outraged citizens demand new restraints, claiming the opportunists are too easily able to exploit its persuasive power and dupe consumers, rendering their critical faculties useless. But the outrage is overblown. Eventually, audience members become more savvy and educated, rendering such criticism quaint and anachronistic. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but my elderly mom complains about the computer with the same fear and paranoia as I remember my grandmother and great aunts sometimes speaking about the telephone. Oh my God, it's a destruction of society. There's a great photograph of people reading newspapers on a commuter train in New York way back, maybe the 20s, 30s. And there was a question on whether that so many people reading the newspapers was making an impersonal society where people didn't engage with each other because they were just into their own little worlds learning about the world. Yep. So, but there's another theme in the country's media history that's often overlooked. In response to each new medium's persuasive power, a healthy popular response ridiculing the rubes falling for the spectacle has arisen. Even Huckleberry Finn. Mark Twain gave us the Duke and the Dauphin, two con artists traveling from town to town, exploiting ignorance with ridiculous theatrical performances and fabricated tall tales. Yeah, they were making the joke on their rubes. So the article goes on, and even if you've never seen Spy v. Spy, oh God, it tracked exactly the Cold War foot dragging, or not foot dragging, but foot stumbling between the Soviet Union and the U.S., frighteningly so. So the article delves much more extensively into this. So do check it out. And that does bring us to the end of our broadcast period for today. But we'll be back here tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. It's not a meddlesome priest. It could just be simply an egg dish with hollandaise. Yep. Okay, so stay tuned for some breaking news throughout the rest of the day from our live national and international feeds. And we will visit with you tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver.